40 pairs of eyes turned toward her, and in that terrible frozen second she knew. The way conversations died mid-sentence. The way people suddenly found their shoes fascinating. The way Brittany from accounting smirked while sitting just a little too close to Derek, Naomi's husband of 7 years. "Oh, you actually came," Derek said, his voice tight. He didn't even stand up. Didn't even pretend to be happy to see her at the Sterling Tech annual party. Naomi clutched her small purse, feeling her face grow hot. She'd spent an hour getting ready, wearing the blue dress Derek once said he loved. She'd been excited because Derek finally invited her to one of his company events. For years, he'd made excuses about why she couldn't attend. Tonight, he'd actually asked her to come. Now she understood why. "I texted you not to come," Derek said, glancing at his phone. "Didn't you get it?" Naomi pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "No text. No missed call. Nothing." "I didn't send it yet," Brittany said with a laugh, holding up her own phone. "Oops. My bad." She leaned into Derek, her hand resting on his arm in a way that was far too familiar, far too comfortable. The room remained painfully silent. Someone coughed. A chair scraped against the floor. "Everyone here knows, don't they?" Naomi heard herself say. Her voice sounded strange, distant. "Everyone except me." Derek's mother, Patricia, sat at a corner table. She wouldn't meet Naomi's eyes. Derek's father, Robert, stared at his drink. They knew. They'd known and they'd said nothing. "Naomi, don't make a scene," Derek hissed, finally standing up. "We'll talk about this at home." "A scene?" Naomi repeated. She felt like she was watching herself from far away. "How long? Does it matter?" Brittany cut in, examining her nails. "He's with me now. Has been for a while. You're just old news." The woman was younger, prettier in an obvious way. All makeup and tight clothes and confidence. Everything Naomi wasn't. 2 years, Derek said flatly. "Okay? 2 years. Happy now. 2 years." Naomi's mind raced backward. 2 years ago, she'd been working from home on her business, thinking everything was fine. 2 years of lies. 2 years of coming home to a man who kissed her goodbye every morning while sleeping with someone else. "My parents work here," Derek continued, his voice defensive now. "Brittany works here. This is my life, my world. You never fit into it anyway. You never even tried." "I never tried?" Naomi's voice cracked. "You never invited me. 7 years of marriage and you kept me away from everything. Because you're boring," Derek said, and the words hit like a punch. "You stay home all day with your little online business, selling whatever. You don't understand real work, real pressure. Brittany understands me. She's part of my world." Someone gasped. Even through her humiliation, Naomi saw a few people look uncomfortable. But no one said anything. No one defended her. Patricia finally spoke up. "Derek, maybe take this outside." "Why?" Brittany interrupted, standing up and wrapping her arm around Derek's waist. "Everyone already knows. We're tired of hiding. Derek's filing for divorce next week anyway." The room spun. Naomi gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "You're already filing?" she whispered. Derek had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but only slightly. "I was going to tell you. Just, not like this." "Not like this," Naomi repeated numbly. "How were you planning to tell me? After you'd already moved in with her? After you'd already celebrated with everyone here?" "You don't get it," Derek said, his frustration growing. "You live in your own little world. You don't know what it's like to have real responsibility. My parents have been with Sterling Tech for 30 years. Brittany's moving up in the company. This is about building a real life, a real future." "And I wasn't real?" Naomi asked quietly. Derek looked away. That was answer enough. Naomi's hand stopped shaking. Something cold settled in her chest, replacing the hurt. She looked around the room one more time. At Derek's parents, who couldn't meet her gaze. At Brittany, who was practically glowing with victory. At the coworkers who'd watched this affair unfold and said nothing. At Derek, who looked irritated more than anything, as if she was inconveniencing him by existing. "Okay," Naomi said softly. "Okay." Derek frowned. "That's it. That's it." Naomi set her purse down carefully on the table. "File the papers. I'll sign them." She saw the surprise flash across his face. He'd expected her to cry, to beg, to make that scene he'd accused her of. Instead, she smiled. A small, strange smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you're very happy together," she said, looking between Derek and Brittany. Then she turned to Derek's parents. "Both of you knew. You welcomed me into your home every holiday, every birthday, and you knew. I hope you can live with that. Patricia's face crumpled, but Naomi was already walking toward the door. Her heels clicked against the tile floor, each step steady and sure. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She walked out with her head high, leaving behind the sound of uncomfortable murmurs and shifting chairs. The elevator doors closed, and only then did Naomi let out a long, slow breath. She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Hello?" a professional voice answered. "It's Naomi," she said quietly. "I'm ready. Proceed with everything we discussed." "Are you certain?" Naomi thought about Derek's face, about Brittany's smirk, about 2 years of lies and a room full of people who'd kept his secret. "I'm certain," she said. "Buy the company. All of it." She hung up and stared at her reflection in the polished elevator doors. The woman looking back at her was done being quiet, done being underestimated, done being dismissed. Derek thought she was boring. He thought her little online business was nothing. He had no idea who she really was. And by the time he found out, it would be far too late. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by a courier who wouldn't meet Naomi's eyes. She signed for them, thanked him, and closed the door to the apartment she'd shared with Derek for 5 years. Their home. Except it had never really been theirs, had it? She decorated it, cleaned it, made it warm. Derek had just lived in it between work and whatever time he spent with Brittany. Naomi sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. The papers were thick, official. Derek's lawyer had been thorough. She read through each page carefully, her business mind automatically noting every clause, every term. He wanted the apartment. He wanted the car they'd bought together 2 years ago. He wanted half of what he thought was in their joint savings account. He was willing to give her a small settlement, paid out over 5 years. It was insulting, but he clearly thought he was being generous. The asset disclosure section made her want to laugh. Derek had listed his salary, his small investment portfolio, his stake in some startup his friend was running. On Naomi's side, he'd written, small online retail business, estimated annual revenue under $50,000. 50,000. He thought her business made 50,000 a year. She'd made that in interest last month alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Sign it. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You'll be fine." Derek couldn't even text from his own number. Probably using Brittany's phone, sitting there together, laughing about how easy this was going to be. Naomi opened her laptop and pulled up a different number. Her lawyer answered on the first ring. "They sent the papers," Naomi said. "And?" The lawyer's voice was sharp, professional. She'd been Naomi's attorney for 3 years, ever since the tech sale. She knew exactly who Naomi was and what she was worth. "It's even worse than I expected. He really thinks I have nothing. Do you want to contest it? We can destroy this agreement in court. Your actual assets." "No," Naomi interrupted. "I'll sign it. Exactly as is." Silence on the other end. "Then, Naomi, I have to advise against that. You'd be giving up rights to assets you're entitled to. The apartment alone." "I don't want anything from him," Naomi said firmly. "Not $1. Not one piece of furniture. I want a clean break. I want him to believe he won." She could hear the lawyer thinking. The Sterling Tech acquisition is moving forward? It should be finalized next week. And he still doesn't know? "No one does," Naomi confirmed. "The purchase is going through a private equity firm I own. My name isn't on anything public. Derek thinks I'm nobody. Let him keep thinking that. This is going to be one hell of a surprise." "That's the point." Naomi clicked her pen. "I'll sign these papers today and send them back. How fast can we make this divorce final? If he's not contesting anything and you're agreeing to all terms? 30 days, maybe less." "Perfect." Naomi hung up and stared at the papers again. 7 years of marriage, reduced to legal language and division of property. She thought about the girl she'd been when she met Derek. 23 years old, working 2 jobs, trying to build her app in stolen hours between shifts. Derek had been charming then, attentive. He told her she was smart, beautiful, going places. Then her app took off. Then the offers came in. Then she sold it for an amount that would have changed both their lives forever. And she never told him. She'd had her reasons. Derek had always been funny about money. Competitive. When she made more at her waitressing job than he did at his first office position, he'd sulked for weeks. When her app started generating revenue, he'd made jokes about her little hobby. Not mean jokes, not then. But enough that she knew. Knew that if he found out she'd become wealthy, something would shift. So she kept it quiet. Put the money in accounts he didn't know about. Kept living their modest life. Kept being the quiet wife who worked from home and didn't ask questions. She thought she was protecting their marriage. Turns out there was nothing to protect. Naomi signed the papers, every single page. She signed away the apartment she'd paid for with her own money, signed away the car, agreed to the tiny settlement, made it as easy as Derek wanted it to be. Then she called the courier service and had them picked up for same-day delivery. Her phone rang an hour later. "Derek, you signed them already?" He sounded surprised, maybe even disappointed. Like he'd wanted a fight. "Yes." Just like that. "You want a divorce, Derek? I'm giving you one." What else is there to say? Silence. Then, "Where are you going to go?" "That's not your concern anymore." "Naomi, look." His voice shifted, uncomfortable. "You don't have to be like this. We can still be civil." Civil. The man had humiliated her in front of his entire company and wanted civil. "I am being civil," Naomi said calmly. "I signed your papers. I'm not asking for anything. This is me being as civil as possible. What about your stuff? Your clothes and... I'll send movers for my personal items. You can have everything else. The furniture, the dishes, all of it. I don't want any of it. You're being weird." Naomi almost laughed. She was being weird. Not him. Not the man who'd cheated for 2 years, who'd humiliated her publicly, who was divorcing her for his mistress. "Goodbye, Derek," she said and hung up. She stood at the window of the apartment looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably complaining to Brittany about how strange his soon-to-be ex-wife was acting. His parents were probably at Sterling Tech right now, working their jobs, relieved the awkward situation with their son's wife was finally resolving. None of them knew what was coming. Naomi's phone buzzed with an email. Subject line, "Sterling Tech Acquisition Final Documentation." She opened it and read through the details. The purchase was complete. As of tomorrow morning, she would own Sterling Tech. Every department. Every employee. Derek's parents' jobs. Brittany's position. The whole thing. And she'd done it through enough corporate layers that her name appeared nowhere. The official owner was listed as Meridian Holdings, which was owned by Cascade Private Equity, which was owned by a trust, which finally led back to Naomi's private accounts. Derek couldn't track it if he tried. And he wouldn't try because he thought she was too small to matter. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was thinking this would be easy. Naomi called her assistant. "Book me a hotel suite. Something nice. I'll be checking out of my apartment tomorrow." "How long should I book it for?" "1 month, Naomi said. "That's how long until I find a permanent place." She was done with this apartment, this neighborhood, this life. The divorce would be final in 30 days. And in that time, Derek's entire world was going to change. He wanted a divorce? He was going to get much more than that. 5 years ago, Naomi had been working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night. She'd been a waitress at a downtown restaurant, a weekend barista, and late at night, when everyone else was sleeping, she'd been building an app that would change everything. The idea had come from frustration. Her grandmother had fallen and couldn't reach her phone. By the time someone found her, hours had passed. Naomi had thought, there has to be a better way. Something automatic. Something that didn't require remembering to press a button or make a call. So she taught herself to code. Spent months building, testing, failing, rebuilding. The app used motion sensors and AI to detect falls, medical emergencies, changes in routine that might indicate problems. It automatically alerted emergency contacts and services. It was simple, elegant, and it worked. She'd called it Guardian Sense. At first, nobody cared. She pitched it to 20 companies. All 20 rejected her. Too niche, they said. Too expensive to develop. Not enough market. Then an elderly man in Ohio credited the app with saving his life after a stroke. The story went viral. Suddenly, everyone wanted Guardian Sense. 6 months after that story broke, Naomi had received 3 acquisition offers. The largest came from a Silicon Valley tech giant. $800 million. She'd been 26 years old. She remembered sitting in the lawyer's office staring at the contract. 800 million. She'd read the number over and over, unable to make it feel real. "This will change your life," the lawyer had said. It had. Just not in the way she'd expected. She'd gone home that night to the tiny apartment she shared with Derek. They'd been married for 2 years then. He'd been working his way up at a marketing firm, proud of his $50,000 salary. She'd meant to tell him. She'd practiced the words in her head a dozen times. But when she walked in, he'd been on the phone with his mother, complaining about money, about bills, about how expensive everything was. "Yeah, Mom, I know. We're barely making it. Naomi's app thing isn't really bringing in anything. Maybe she should get a real job again. She'd stood in the doorway listening. No, I haven't told her that. But honestly, this startup dream isn't practical. We need actual income, not fantasies. That's when she decided to keep the secret. She told herself it was temporary. Just until she figured out how to explain it. Just until Derek was in a better place emotionally. Just until the right moment. But the right moment never came. Derek got promoted. Started making $70,000, then $90,000. He became more confident, more dismissive of her work. Her little online business became a running joke at family dinners. She let him believe it made barely enough to cover her expenses. Meanwhile, Naomi had invested her money carefully. Real estate, stocks, other startups. She'd worked with financial advisors who specialized in privacy. Everything was in her name alone, in accounts Derek didn't know existed. By the time she walked into that Sterling Tech party and discovered his affair, her net worth had grown to over $1 billion. And her husband, who was leaving her for another woman, thought she had nothing. Now, sitting in her lawyer's office 3 days after signing the divorce papers, Naomi watched as her financial advisor pulled up her portfolio on a large screen. Your real estate holdings are here, he said, pointing to a column of numbers. The tech investments here. Stocks and bonds here. And your newest acquisition, Sterling Tech, is here. Naomi studied the screen. Sterling Tech had cost her $60 million. It was a mid-sized company, solid but not spectacular. Good enough that Derek's parents had built 30-year careers there. Small enough that it could be bought quietly. The purchase has been completely clean, her lawyer added. No one knows you're the actual owner. The board thinks they're dealing with a standard private equity takeover. Good, Naomi said. Keep it that way for now. What's the employee situation? Her advisor flipped to another screen. 412 employees total. Your ex-husband's parents, Patricia and Robert Henderson, work in operations. Both solid employees, good records. The other woman, Brittany Oakes, works in accounting. Her record is interesting. Interesting how? 3 complaints filed against her for unprofessional conduct. All dropped. She's been promoted twice in 2 years, both times after those complaints. Naomi leaned forward. Who authorized the promotions? The advisor checked his notes. First promotion was authorized by the department head at the time, who has since left the company. Second promotion was pushed through by someone in upper management. Records show some irregular communications, possible favoritism. Derek's parents pulled strings, Naomi said quietly. Her lawyer nodded. That would be my guess. They have enough seniority to influence decisions. If their son was dating this woman, they might have helped her career along. So Brittany's whole position is based on nepotism and covered-up complaints. Looks that way. Naomi sat back in her chair. She thought about Brittany's smirk at the party, her confidence. The woman thought she'd won. She'd stolen someone's husband and gotten promoted at her job. Everything was working out perfectly for her. Not for much longer. I want a full audit, Naomi said. Every department, every employee, every policy. I want to know exactly how Sterling Tech has been running. Pay special attention to the accounting department and any irregularities in hiring or promotion practices. That will take time, the advisor warned. I have time. The divorce isn't final for 3 more weeks. I want everything ready by then. Her lawyer made notes. What's your goal here, Naomi? Are you planning to fire people? Restructure? Naomi considered the question. Revenge was too simple a word for what she wanted. Justice felt closer but still not quite right. I want the truth to come out, she finally said. Derek and his parents and Brittany all think they're untouchable. They think there are no consequences for what they did. I want them to face reality. And what reality is that? That actions matter. That you can't just hurt people and walk away clean. Naomi stood up, walked to the window. Derek thinks I'm nothing. A boring housewife with a failed business. His parents looked me in the eye at Christmas dinner while knowing their son was cheating. Brittany humiliated me in front of a room full of people. They all think they won. She turned back to face her team. I want them to understand exactly what they lost, what they threw away, and I want them to face the consequences of their own choices. Not because I'm forcing anything on them, just because the truth is finally going to matter. Her lawyer smiled slowly. You know, when you first came to me 3 years ago, you were so quiet, so careful. I wondered why you were hiding all this wealth. I was afraid, Naomi admitted. Afraid of how money would change things. Turns out things changed anyway. You're different now. I'm done being afraid. Naomi returned to her seat. Start the audit. I want detailed reports on every policy violation, every irregularity, every shortcut that was taken. And I want to know everyone who knew about Derek's affair with an employee and said nothing. That could implicate a lot of people. Good. They should be implicated. Sterling Tech has an ethics policy, I assume? The advisor checked. Standard corporate policy. Relationships between employees must be disclosed. Conflicts of interest must be reported. Family members can't directly supervise each other. And Derek's parents helped promote their son's girlfriend while she had complaints against her. That's multiple policy violations. At least 3 that I can see immediately. Naomi nodded. Then we're not doing anything wrong. We're just enforcing the rules that already exist. If people get in trouble, it's because they broke those rules. That's not revenge. That's accountability. Her lawyer closed her folder. When do you want to reveal yourself as owner? Not yet. First, I want everything documented. Every violation, every problem. I want it airtight. Then, when the divorce is final and Derek thinks he's moved on with his life, that's when he'll find out who really won. Naomi left the office an hour later with a clear plan. The divorce would be final in 3 weeks. The audit would take about 4 weeks. Perfect timing. She'd spent 7 years being underestimated. 7 years being dismissed, being treated like she didn't matter, being kept separate from Derek's real life. Now Derek was about to discover that his real life had been built on lies. And the wife he'd thrown away owned every piece of it. The Sterling Tech building was downtown, a 15-story glass structure that reflected the afternoon sun. Naomi had driven past it 100 times during her marriage, never going inside. Derek had never invited her. Now she owned it. She sat in her car across the street, watching employees come and go through the revolving doors. Lunch break. People chatted on the sidewalk, holding coffee cups and paper bags. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their company had just changed hands. Somewhere in that building, Derek's parents were working. Brittany was at her desk in accounting. They were all going about their days thinking everything was fine. Naomi's phone rang. Her business manager, Trevor. The board meeting is set for next week, he said. They want to meet the new ownership team. They'll meet the Meridian Holdings representatives, Naomi corrected. My name stays out of it. Understood. What do you want us to focus on? Naomi had thought about this carefully. She couldn't just walk in and start firing people. That would be cruel and possibly illegal. She had to be smart about this. Strategic. Start with a company-wide review, she said. New ownership wants to understand every department. Make it clear this is standard procedure after an acquisition. Nothing threatening. They'll be nervous anyway, Trevor warned. New owners always make people nervous. That's fine. Nervous employees pay attention to rules. Which brings me to the second point. I want every company policy reviewed and redistributed. Ethics guidelines, workplace conduct, everything. Make sure every single employee signs an acknowledgement that they've read and understood the policies. Trevor was quiet for a moment. You're building a paper trail. I'm making sure everyone knows the rules, Naomi corrected. What they do with that information is up to them. What about the departments where the people you're concerned about work? Naomi appreciated that he didn't say ex-husband's family out loud. Trevor knew the whole story. He'd been the one to handle the Sterling Tech purchase, working through multiple shell companies to keep her identity hidden. Operations and accounting get extra attention, Naomi said. I want detailed reports on both departments. Productivity, policy compliance, any irregularities. And Trevor? Make sure the team doing the review doesn't know why they're doing it. I don't want anyone thinking this is personal. It's not personal? It's business, Naomi said firmly. Bad business was being conducted. Policies were being violated. That affects the whole company. I'm just bringing it to light. After hanging up with Trevor, Naomi pulled up her tablet and reviewed the initial reports her team had compiled. Sterling Tech was a decent company overall. Good products, solid client base. But there were problems. The accounting department had high turnover. People kept quitting and exit interviews mentioned uncomfortable work environment and unprofessional behavior. None of the interviews named names, but the timing matched up with Brittany's tenure there. The operations department, where Derek's parents worked, had a reputation for favoritism. If you were friends with the right people, you got opportunities. If not, you stagnated. Derek's mother Patricia was well-liked but known for protecting her people. A group of employees she'd essentially adopted over her 30 years at the company. Robert was quieter, but he'd been on several hiring committees and had influence over who got brought in. Together, they created a little power structure within the company. Nothing illegal but not exactly healthy either. And they'd used that power to help Brittany. Naomi's tablet showed the promotion records. Brittany had joined Sterling Tech 3 years ago as a junior accountant. Within 6 months, she'd been promoted to senior accountant. A year after that, she'd become an accounting manager. Both promotions came with significant pay raises. Both happened shortly after complaints were filed against her, complaints that were subsequently dropped or dismissed as misunderstandings. The timeline was damning. Brittany started working at Sterling Tech 3 years ago. Derek's affair had been going on for 2 years, which meant, Naomi did the math. They'd started seeing each other within a year of Brittany joining the company, right around the time of her first promotion. Had Derek met her through his parents? Had they introduced their son to the young woman at their company, never imagining it would turn into an affair? Or had they known all along? Naomi thought about Patricia's face at that party. The way she couldn't meet Naomi's eyes. That wasn't just embarrassment. That was guilt. They'd known. They'd probably known from the beginning. A new email popped up on her tablet. Subject, Sterling Tech, HR Records Review. Naomi opened it. Her HR consultant had been thorough. The report showed every policy violation that had been documented but not properly addressed over the past 3 years. There were more than she'd expected. Brittany had been involved in 7 different incidents. 3 formal complaints about inappropriate behavior toward co-workers. 2 reports of inaccurate financial records that were later corrected. 1 complaint from a client about unprofessional communication. All 7 incidents had been resolved internally, without any disciplinary action. In most cases, the person who filed the complaint had left the company within 6 months. That was a pattern. A clear, documented pattern of protecting one employee at the expense of others. Naomi forwarded the report to Trevor. This needs to be part of the formal review. Every incident, every complaint, everything. If there are policy violations that were never properly addressed, they need to be reopened and handled correctly. She wasn't inventing problems. These were real issues that the previous ownership had ignored or covered up. She was just finally giving them the attention they deserved. Her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Movers coming for your stuff tomorrow? Want to coordinate so I'm not there. She stared at the message. Even now, he couldn't handle being in the same space as her. Too awkward. Too uncomfortable. Fine, she texted back. After 2 p.m. She'd already arranged for a moving company to pack up her personal belongings. Clothes, books, a few pieces of jewelry that had been gifts from her grandmother. That was all she wanted from that apartment. Everything else could stay. Derek could have the furniture she'd bought, the dishes she'd picked out, the life they'd pretended to build together. She didn't need any of it. Another email arrived. The Sterling Tech board had accepted the proposal for a comprehensive company review. They'd agreed to bring in an outside consulting firm to assess operations and make recommendations for improvement. They thought they were being responsible, showing the new owners that they cared about company health. They had no idea they were helping Naomi document everything she needed. The divorce papers had gone through quickly. Another week and it would be final. Derek would be free to marry Brittany or do whatever he wanted. His parents could stop feeling awkward about family dinners. Everyone could move on with their lives. Except Naomi wasn't moving on. She was moving forward. There was a difference. Moving on meant letting go, forgetting, pretending none of it mattered. Moving forward meant taking every lesson, every hurt, every humiliation and using it as fuel to build something better. She'd spent 7 years being quiet, being dismissed, being kept in the background of her own life. Those 7 years were over. Naomi put her car in gear and drove away from the Sterling Tech building. She had a meeting with her real estate agent in an hour. She was looking at penthouses, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows and views of the entire city. The kind of place Derek would never have dreamed she could afford. She smiled to herself. In 2 months, maybe less, Derek would walk into Sterling Tech for a regular day of work. Maybe he'd have lunch with his parents in the cafeteria. Maybe he'd meet Brittany after work for dinner. And then he'd hear the news. New ownership wasn't just reviewing the company. They were implementing changes. Real changes. The kind that people couldn't ignore or explain away. By the time he realized what was happening, it would be too late. The quiet wife with the little online business was gone. In her place was someone Derek had never bothered to know. And she was just getting started. The Meridian Holdings team arrived at Sterling Tech on a Monday morning with briefcases and professional smiles. Naomi watched the whole thing on a video feed from her new penthouse apartment, sipping coffee while her representatives walked into the building she owned. Trevor led the team, 3 consultants, 2 HR specialists, and a lawyer. They looked exactly like what they were supposed to be, a private equity firm conducting standard due diligence after an acquisition. Nobody at Sterling Tech knew the real owner was watching from a luxury high-rise across town, taking notes. The first meeting was with the board. Naomi listened as Trevor outlined the plan. Meridian Holdings believes Sterling Tech has excellent potential, he said smoothly. But to unlock that potential, we need to ensure every department is operating at peak efficiency. That means reviewing current practices, updating policies, and making sure we're in full compliance with all ethical and legal standards. The board members nodded along. Of course they did. This was standard corporate language. Nothing threatening. We'll be conducting employee interviews, reviewing financial records, and assessing workplace culture, Trevor continued. This process will take approximately 6 weeks. We appreciate your cooperation. The CEO, a man named Gerald, spoke up. Will there be layoffs? That's not the goal, Trevor said carefully. The goal is optimization. However, if we discover practices or behaviors that don't align with company values, appropriate action will be taken. More nodding. Still nothing alarming. Companies did this kind of thing all the time. Naomi watched Patricia and Robert in the operations department through the building's internal security cameras. Her IT team had given her access to everything, all completely legal since she owned the company. Patricia was talking to a coworker looking worried. New ownership always means changes, she was saying. We just need to keep our heads down and do our jobs. If only it were that simple. The next week, every Sterling Tech employee received a memo. All company policies were being updated and redistributed. Everyone needed to read the new handbook and sign an acknowledgement form. The handbook was 200 pages long. Most people would skim it, sign it, and forget about it. But Naomi's team had been very careful about what went into that handbook. Section 12. Workplace relationships. Any romantic relationship between employees must be disclosed to HR within 30 days of the relationship beginning. Failure to disclose may result in disciplinary action, up to and including termination. Section 15. Conflicts of interest. Employees may not use their position or influence to benefit family members, romantic partners, or close personal associates. Any potential conflicts of interest must be reported immediately. Section 23. Professional conduct. All complaints regarding workplace behavior will be taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. Retaliation against employees who file complaints is strictly prohibited. And the key section, Section 31. Retroactive policy enforcement. While these policies are being officially implemented today, they reflect the ethical standards that Sterling Tech has always maintained. Any violations of these principles that occurred prior to this date may still be subject to review and appropriate action. That last section had been Naomi's idea. Her lawyers had assured her it was legal. The company had always had ethics guidelines, they were just making them more explicit and enforceable. If someone had violated those ethics in the past, even before the new ownership, it still counted. Every employee signed the acknowledgement. They had to or they'd lose their jobs. Patricia signed it. Robert signed it. Brittany signed it. They probably didn't even read it carefully. Why would they? It was just corporate paperwork. Phase 2 began the following week. The consulting team started conducting private interviews with employees. One by one, people were called into conference rooms and asked about their experiences at Sterling Tech. Naomi read every single interview transcript. A woman from accounting. The environment has improved recently, but a couple years ago it was really tense. There was someone who made things uncomfortable. I don't want to name names, but several people left because of it. A man from operations. The Henderson family is nice, but there's definitely favoritism. If you're in their circle, you get opportunities. If not, you're kind of invisible. Another accounting employee. I filed a complaint once about inappropriate comments. Nothing happened. I was told to not take things so seriously. I almost quit over it. The interviews painted a clear picture. Sterling Tech wasn't a terrible place to work, but it had problems. Problems that had been ignored because certain people were protected. Naomi's HR team compiled everything into a detailed report. Policy violations, undocumented conflicts of interest, complaints that were dismissed without proper investigation. And right in the middle of it all, Brittany Oakes, promoted twice despite multiple complaints. Derek's parents, using their influence to protect her. A clear pattern of favoritism and policy violations that the previous leadership had chosen to overlook. Naomi scheduled a call with Trevor. How solid is the case? Extremely solid, Trevor confirmed. We have documented complaints, witnesses who are willing to talk now that they know their concerns will be taken seriously, and a clear pattern of policy violations. If you want to take action, you have more than enough justification. I want it airtight, Naomi insisted. I don't want anyone thinking this is personal or vindictive. This has to be purely about policy enforcement and company standards. It is, Trevor assured her. Everything we're doing is standard corporate governance. The fact that it happens to affect specific people is just a consequence of their own choices. Naomi appreciated the careful wording. Trevor understood what she was trying to do. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. The following Monday, Brittany was called into HR. Naomi wasn't there in person, but she'd asked for a full report. Brittany had arrived confident, probably assuming this was just another routine interview. Instead, the HR director laid out 7 incidents over 3 years. Each one documented. Each one a violation of company policy. These complaints were never properly investigated, the HR director explained. Under our updated policies, we're required to address them now. Brittany had tried to defend herself. Those were misunderstandings. They were resolved. They were dismissed, the HR director corrected. That's not the same as resolved. Several employees left the company because their concerns weren't taken seriously. That's not acceptable. The meeting had lasted 2 hours. By the end, Brittany was no longer confident. She was on official notice. Any future violations would result in immediate termination. And her previous promotions were being reviewed to ensure they'd been merit-based. That afternoon, Naomi watched through the security cameras as Brittany rushed to Patricia's desk in operations. They talked in hushed voices, both looking worried. They should be worried. But Naomi wasn't done yet. 2 days later, the operations department underwent its own review. The consulting team discovered what Naomi already knew. Patricia and Robert Henderson had been using their seniority to influence hiring and promotion decisions for years. Not always in bad ways. Sometimes they'd helped deserving people. But they'd also helped people who were connected to them personally, regardless of merit. And they'd specifically helped Brittany Oakes, who was dating their son. The conflict of interest was massive. They should have disclosed Derek's relationship with Brittany the moment it started. Instead, they kept it quiet and used their influence to advance her career. That was a clear violation of Section 15 of the new handbook. The handbook they'd both signed. Patricia and Robert were called in together. Naomi read the transcript of that meeting too. We didn't think we needed to disclose it, Patricia had said, her voice shaking. Derek doesn't work here. We didn't see a conflict. But you used your positions to help advance Ms. Oakes's career, the HR director pointed out. You were on the committee that approved her first promotion. Robert, you recommended her for her second promotion. Both of you knew she was dating your son. That's a textbook conflict of interest. Robert had tried to argue. We recommended her because she was qualified. She had 3 active complaints against her at the time of her first promotion, the HR director said flatly. Complaints that were dismissed without proper investigation. That doesn't suggest qualification. It suggests protection. The meeting had ended with both of them on formal notice as well. Not fired, not yet. But their influence was gone. They'd been removed from all hiring and promotion committees. Any future conflicts of interest would result in immediate termination. Naomi closed her laptop and sat back in her new apartment. The city stretched out below her, lights coming on as evening fell. 3 weeks ago, she'd been the one who was humiliated. The one who was dismissed and underestimated. Now the people who'd humiliated her were facing consequences they'd never imagined. And Derek still had no idea any of this was happening. Her phone buzzed. A notification that the divorce had been finalized that afternoon. 7 years of marriage officially over. Naomi felt nothing. No sadness. No regret. Just a sense of completion. That chapter of her life was closed. The next chapter was just beginning. And it was going to be very, very interesting. Derek's first hint that something was wrong came from his mother. They're investigating everyone, Patricia said over the phone, her voice tight with stress. The new owners brought in this whole team. They're going through every department, every decision made in the last 5 years. Naomi listened to the voicemail. Derek had called her number by accident, probably meaning to call Brittany, and left the message before realizing his mistake. Brittany's scared, he continued in the message. They brought up old complaints that were already handled. Dad's worried too. This new company is different. They actually care about policy violations. He said it like it was a bad thing. Naomi deleted the voicemail and pulled up the latest report from Sterling Tech. The consulting team was in week 4 of their review. They'd moved beyond individual interviews and were now examining departmental practices. The accounting department was being restructured. New oversight procedures. New approval processes for promotions and raises. The days of people advancing without proper justification were over. Operations was undergoing similar changes. The old informal networks, the "I'll help you if you help me" culture that Patricia and Robert had been part of, were being documented and dismantled. Everything was becoming transparent, documented, accountable. For people who'd operated in the shadows, it was terrifying. Naomi's phone rang. Not Derek this time, his brother, Justin. She hesitated, then answered. "Naomi?" Justin sounded uncomfortable. "I know we haven't talked since the divorce, but I wanted to reach out." "Why?" Naomi kept her voice neutral. "My parents are really stressed. This thing at their company is getting bad. Mom's barely sleeping. She's afraid they're going to lose their jobs." "That's not my problem, Justin." I know. But look, whatever happened between you and Derek, my parents didn't deserve this." Naomi felt a flash of anger. "Your parents knew Derek was cheating on me for 2 years. They welcomed me into their home, smiled to my face and said nothing. Don't tell me they don't deserve consequences. They were in an impossible position." "No," Naomi interrupted. "They made a choice. They chose to protect Derek and his mistress instead of doing the right thing. Now they're facing the results of that choice." "Naomi, I get that you're hurt." "Hurt?" Naomi laughed, a sharp sound. "Justin, your brother humiliated me in front of his entire company. His mistress mocked me. Your parents enabled all of it. And you're calling to tell me they don't deserve consequences? Where was this concern when I was being betrayed?" Justin was quiet. "Then, what do you want? What would make this right?" "Nothing," Naomi said simply. "There's nothing they can do. This isn't about them anymore. It's about moving forward with my life." "But if their company is..." "Goodbye, Justin." She hung up before he could finish. Her hands were shaking. She'd liked Justin once. He'd seemed like the reasonable one in Derek's family. But even he was defending them, minimizing what they'd done. They all thought she should just forgive and forget. Move on. Be the bigger person. But being the bigger person was what had gotten her hurt in the first place. She'd been quiet, accommodating, understanding. And where had that gotten her? A week later, the Sterling Tech situation escalated. The company announced a formal ethics review of all employees in leadership or oversight positions. Anyone who'd been involved in hiring, promotions, or disciplinary decisions in the past 5 years needed to be cleared. Most people passed the review easily. They'd followed procedures, documented their decisions, acted appropriately. But some people hadn't. Patricia Henderson was called in for her review on a Thursday morning. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, she was given a choice: voluntary demotion to a position with no oversight responsibilities or termination. She chose demotion. She couldn't afford to lose her job entirely, not with retirement only 5 years away. Robert received the same choice the following day. Same outcome. Derek's parents went from being respected senior employees to basic staff members in a single week. No more influence. No more power to help people. No more special treatment. Brittany's review came next. Hers was more severe. The investigation had found that not only had she received unfair promotions, but there were also discrepancies in some of the financial reports she'd been responsible for. Nothing criminal, but careless enough to raise questions about her competence. Combined with the documented complaints about her behavior, the evidence was damning. Brittany was terminated. Naomi learned about it through Trevor's report, delivered matter-of-factly. Employment terminated effective immediately for violation of multiple company policies and failure to meet professional standards. Security escorted her from the building at 3:47 p.m. Naomi imagined that scene. Brittany, who'd been so confident at that party, walking out of Sterling Tech with a box of her belongings. No more power. No more position. Just another person who'd lost their job. But unlike Naomi, Brittany had lost it through her own actions. Derek found out about Brittany's termination within an hour. He called Naomi's phone 6 times before finally leaving a voicemail. "This is your fault," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "I don't know how, but you did this. My parents' careers are destroyed. Brittany just lost her job. And it's all happening right after our divorce? That's not a coincidence. He wasn't entirely wrong, but he couldn't prove anything. You need to fix this, Derek continued in the message. I don't care what I have to do. Call whoever you need to call. Use whatever connections you have. This is wrong, Naomi. You're hurting innocent people because you're bitter about the divorce. Innocent people. That's what he thought his parents and Brittany were. Naomi called her lawyer. Can he prove I'm behind this? No, the lawyer said firmly. The paper trail is clean. Meridian Holdings purchased Sterling Tech through completely legal means. The ethics review is standard corporate governance. Every action taken has been justified by documented policy violations. There's no connection to you anywhere. He's going to keep digging. Let him. He'll find a private equity firm that owns the company. That firm is owned by a trust. That trust is owned by shell companies in 3 different states. By the time he traces it back to you, if he even can, he'll run out of money for lawyers. Derek didn't have the resources for that kind of investigation. He made good money but not trace ownership through multiple corporate entities' money. Another voicemail came through later that evening. This one was quieter, more desperate. Naomi, please. I know I hurt you. I know the divorce was hard. But my family is falling apart. My mom cries every night. My dad won't talk to anyone. Brittany left me. She said I ruined her life, that my family ruined her career. There it was. Brittany had already moved on, blaming Derek for everything that had happened. The woman he'd left his wife for, who'd promised she understood him, who'd seemed so perfect. She was gone the moment things got difficult. I don't have anyone else to call, Derek continued. You're the only one who might understand. Whatever I did, whatever mistakes I made, this punishment is too much. Please just, if you know anyone who can help, if you have any connections, please help us. Naomi listened to the whole message, then deleted it. She felt no satisfaction in Derek's pain. But she felt no guilt either. Everything that was happening was a direct result of choices people had made. Derek chose to cheat. His parents chose to enable it. Brittany chose to be unprofessional and unethical in her work. The previous company leadership chose to ignore problems. All Naomi had done was enforce standards. Bring truth to light. Make sure that the rules everyone else had to follow actually mattered. That wasn't revenge. That was justice. Her phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Final phase ready when you are. Board wants to meet the actual owner. They're getting nervous about all the changes. Naomi thought about it. She'd originally planned to wait longer to let the situation settle. But maybe it was time. Time for Derek to learn the truth. Time for his parents to understand who they dismissed. Time for everyone at Sterling Tech to know exactly who owned their company. She texted back, schedule it for next week. Full company meeting. Everyone attends. Are you sure? Naomi looked around her penthouse apartment. At the life she'd built quietly, secretly, while everyone else dismissed her as nothing. I'm sure, she typed. It's time. The internal investigation at Sterling Tech expanded beyond what anyone expected. What started as a routine ethics review had uncovered a web of policy violations, undocumented conflicts of interest, and a culture of favoritism that went back years. Naomi sat in her penthouse, reviewing the final investigative report. It was damning, but not in the way she'd anticipated. Yes, Brittany had violated multiple policies. Yes, Patricia and Robert had used their influence inappropriately. But the investigation had revealed something else. Derek himself had been involved more than anyone realized. He called the HR department directly, Trevor explained during their video conference. 3 years ago, right after Brittany started working there, he called to check on a friend, which was Brittany. The HR rep made a note of it but didn't think it was a violation since Derek wasn't an employee. But then he did it again? Naomi guessed. Twice more. Once to ask about her first promotion, just curious how his parents' colleague was doing. Another time to inquire about a complaint filed against her. He claimed he was asking on behalf of his parents, but the pattern is clear. He was using his family's position to get information and potentially influence decisions. Naomi leaned back in her chair. Derek hadn't just been a cheating husband. He'd actively helped his mistress navigate and manipulate the company where his parents worked. That's a bigger problem than we thought, she said. It gets worse, Trevor continued. We found emails. Derek sent his mother several messages about Brittany over the past 2 years, asking her to look out for Brittany, to make sure she gets fair consideration for promotions. At one point, he explicitly asked his father to recommend Brittany for a management position. He used his parents' careers to advance his girlfriend's career. Exactly. And his parents went along with it. They didn't just passively know about the affair. They actively facilitated it, including using their professional positions to help her. Naomi felt sick. It was so much worse than she'd thought. This wasn't just an affair. It was corruption, nepotism, and a complete disregard for professional ethics. What does legal say? She asked. The company has grounds to pursue action against all three of them, Trevor said. Patricia and Robert for misuse of their positions. Brittany for accepting benefits obtained through conflicts of interest. And Derek for attempting to influence company decisions as a non-employee with personal interests. Derek could be sued? Potentially. At minimum, he could be banned from the premises and flagged as a conflict of interest for any future dealings with Sterling Tech. But Naomi. Trevor paused. If you pursue legal action against him directly, it will reveal your ownership. There's no way to sue him without making your involvement public. Naomi considered this. Part of her wanted Derek to face every possible consequence. But another part, the strategic part, knew that revealing herself too early could complicate everything. Hold off on action against Derek personally, she decided. But I want everything documented. Every email, every phone call, every instance of him trying to influence company matters. We may need it later. Understood. What about Patricia and Robert? They already accepted demotions. That consequence stands. But I want them to know why. Schedule a meeting with them and the HR director. Show them the evidence of what Derek did, what they did in response. Make sure they understand this isn't about the affair. It's about professional ethics violations. That meeting happened 2 days later. Naomi watched via secure video feed as Patricia and Robert sat in the conference room, looking older than she remembered. The HR director laid out everything. The emails from Derek. The documented instances of favoritism. The complaints that were dismissed. The promotions that weren't justified. Your son used your positions at this company to benefit his girlfriend, the HR director said bluntly. You allowed it to happen. In some cases, you actively participated. Patricia was crying. We didn't think it was wrong. He's our son. Brittany seemed like a nice girl. We just wanted to help. You violated the trust this company placed in you, the HR director continued. You put personal relationships ahead of professional responsibilities. That's not acceptable regardless of your intentions. Robert finally spoke, his voice rough. Is this about Derek's ex-wife? Is she behind this? The HR director didn't flinch. This is about company policy. Personnel decisions are confidential. What I can tell you is that everything we've done is standard practice for ethics violations. Who owns the company is irrelevant to whether rules were broken. But the timing? The timing is because new ownership takes these matters seriously, the HR director interrupted. Previous leadership ignored these issues. That was their failure. We're correcting it now. Patricia and Robert left that meeting broken. Naomi could see it in their faces, their posture. They'd spent 30 years building careers at Sterling Tech, earning respect and influence. Now they were demoted employees with ethics violations on their records. And they were finally realizing that their son had used them. Derek hadn't just asked for little favors. He'd systematically exploited their positions to help his mistress, never considering how it might affect their careers. The investigation report was finalized that week. 200 pages of documented policy violations, ethical lapses, and recommendations for structural changes. Sterling Tech's board received the report on a Friday afternoon. An emergency meeting was called for Monday morning. Naomi reviewed the board meeting agenda. Item 1. Review of ethics investigation findings. Item 2. Required organizational changes. Item 3. Meet with company ownership. That third item had been her request. The board had been pushing to meet the actual owner for weeks. They were nervous about all the changes, uncertain about the future. They deserved to know who was making these decisions. And everyone at Sterling Tech, all 412 employees, deserved to know the truth. Trevor had arranged for a company-wide meeting Wednesday afternoon. Attendance mandatory. The official reason was organizational updates and ownership introduction. Derek would be there. He'd been calling Patricia obsessively, trying to understand what was happening. She told him about the mandatory meeting, about the rumors that the real owner was finally going to reveal themselves. Maybe it's someone we know, Derek had said in one of his voicemails to his mother, which Naomi had obtained through legal channels. Maybe it's someone who will listen to reason. We can explain what happened, make them understand this was all a misunderstanding. He still thought he could talk his way out of this. Still thought his charm, his explanations, his justifications would matter. He had no idea. Naomi spent the weekend preparing. She had her attorney review every detail of the revelation plan. She had Trevor confirm that every piece of evidence was documented and legally sound. She had her PR team ready to handle any media attention that might result. And she had her therapist on speed dial because even though she'd planned this carefully, even though she knew it was justified, it was still going to be intense. "How do you feel?" her therapist asked during their Sunday evening session. "Ready," Naomi said. "For the first time in years, I feel completely ready." Ready for what, specifically? To stop hiding. I've been hiding who I am for so long. First because I was afraid of how money would change my marriage. Then because I wanted to catch Derek and his family in their lies. But I'm done hiding now. What do you want them to see when you reveal yourself? Naomi thought about that. I want them to see who I really am. Not the quiet wife. Not the boring woman with the little online business. The actual me. The woman who built something from nothing. The woman who's successful and smart and capable. I want them to see everything they dismissed and underestimated. And then I'm done with them. After Wednesday, Derek and his family will know the truth. They'll face the consequences of their actions. And I'll move forward with my life. Without them in it. Without them in it, Naomi confirmed. This isn't about keeping them in my life in any capacity. It's about making sure they understand what they lost, what they threw away. And then closing that door permanently. Monday morning, the Sterling Tech board met to discuss the investigation report. Naomi joined via video conference, her camera off, identified only as Meridian Holdings representative. The board members were rattled. The report had shown them just how bad things had gotten under their watch. "We had no idea the favoritism was this extensive," the CEO said. "That's the problem," Naomi's representative said, a lawyer she'd hired specifically for this role. "Leadership is supposed to know. The fact that you didn't raise serious questions about oversight." The board approved every recommended change. New ethics policies. Mandatory training. Restructured oversight for all departments. They didn't have a choice. The alternative was potential liability for the company. "One more item," the CEO said. "The ownership wants to address the company directly." "When?" "Wednesday, 2 p.m., the representative confirmed. "All employees must attend. This is non-negotiable." "What should we tell people?" "Tell them the truth. The owner wants to introduce themselves and discuss the company's future. That's all they need to know for now." Tuesday was a flurry of preparation. Naomi had a professional styling session, not to change who she was, but to present herself powerfully. She chose a sharp business suit in deep navy, elegant but authoritative. Her hair was styled simply. Minimal jewelry. She wanted to look like what she was, a successful businesswoman. She rehearsed her speech 3 times with Trevor. "Keep it factual," he advised. "Don't get emotional. Don't make it personal. Just state the facts and let those facts speak for themselves. What if Derek tries to confront me? Security will be present. If anyone becomes disruptive, they'll be removed." Naomi barely slept Tuesday night. She kept imagining Derek's face when he realized the truth. His parents' shock. The whispers that would ripple through the company. Part of her was terrified, but a larger part was excited. Wednesday morning, she put on her navy suit and looked at herself in the mirror. 7 years ago, she'd married Derek thinking they'd build a life together. She'd kept her success secret to protect their relationship. Now she was going to reveal everything. Not to hurt him, though that would happen, but to finally be seen for who she really was. Her driver picked her up at 1 p.m. The Sterling Tech building was a 20-minute drive. Naomi spent the time reviewing her notes, though she'd memorized every word. At 1:45 p.m., she walked through the front doors of Sterling Tech for the first time. Employees were already gathering in the large conference hall. 400 people, talking nervously, speculating about what was going to happen. Somewhere in that crowd was Derek. His parents. His former mistress. No, Brittany had been fired. She wouldn't be there. Trevor met Naomi at a side entrance. "Ready?" Naomi took a deep breath. "Ready. Remember, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just revealing the truth." "I know." At 2 p.m. exactly, the lights in the conference hall dimmed. A spotlight illuminated the stage. The CEO walked out to scattered applause. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "As you know, Sterling Tech has undergone significant changes in recent months. Today, you're going to meet the person responsible for those changes. It's my honor to introduce the owner of Meridian Holdings and the new majority owner of Sterling Tech. This was it. The moment everything changed. Ms. Naomi Williams. Naomi walked onto the stage, and 400 people gasped. The silence in the conference hall was absolute. Naomi stood at the podium looking out at 400 stunned faces. She found Derek immediately, third row, center section. His mouth was open, his face pale. Next to him, Patricia and Robert looked equally shocked. "Good afternoon," Naomi said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My name is Naomi Williams and I am the owner of Sterling Tech." Whispers erupted. People turned to each other, confused. The woman Derek had divorced, the quiet wife who nobody thought mattered, owned the company? Naomi waited for the murmurs to die down. She'd practiced this moment, knew she needed to stay calm and factual. "I know many of you are surprised," she continued. "Some of you know me as Derek Henderson's ex-wife. You saw me at a company party several months ago. That was the night I learned my husband had been having an affair for 2 years with an employee of this company." More whispers. People were looking at Derek now. He'd sunk lower in his seat. "I'm not here to discuss my personal life," Naomi said firmly. "I'm here to discuss Sterling Tech. 6 weeks ago, I purchased this company through Meridian Holdings, a private equity firm I own. The purchase was legal, transparent, and properly documented." She clicked a button on the podium. Behind her, a screen lit up with financial documents, purchase agreements, corporate filings, everything proving the acquisition was legitimate. Following the purchase, we conducted a standard ethics review. What we found was deeply concerning. Another click. The screen now showed statistics. Number of complaints filed over the past 5 years. Number that were properly investigated. The gap between those two numbers was staggering. Sterling Tech had systemic problems, Naomi continued. Favoritism. Conflicts of interest that went undisclosed. Complaints that were dismissed without investigation. This wasn't just about one department or one person. It was a culture that allowed unethical behavior to continue unchecked. She paused, making eye contact with different sections of the audience. "Over the past 6 weeks, we've worked to correct these problems. We've implemented clear ethics policies. We've investigated documented violations. We've held people accountable for their actions." Click. The screen now showed the new ethics policies, the ones every employee had signed. "Everything we've done has been standard corporate governance. No different from what any responsible company would do after discovering policy violations. Some people have faced consequences as a result. Those consequences were not personal. They were professional responses to professional misconduct." Derek stood up suddenly. "This is personal," he said loudly. "Everyone knows it. You bought this company to get revenge on me." Security moved toward him, but Naomi held up a hand. "Mr. Henderson," she said calmly, "I bought this company because it was a good investment opportunity. Sterling Tech has excellent products and a solid client base. What I discovered after the purchase were ethical violations that needed to be addressed. You expect us to believe that's a coincidence?" Derek's voice was shaking. "That you just happened to buy the company where my parents work, where Brittany worked? I expect you to look at the facts," Naomi replied. "Did your parents use their positions to help advance Brittany's career?" "Yes. We have documented evidence." "Did you personally contact company HR multiple times to inquire about Brittany and her career progression?" "Yes. We have phone records and emails." The screen changed again. Now it showed emails, Derek's emails to his mother, asking her to look out for Brittany. His father's responses agreeing to recommend her for promotions. Patricia made a small sound of distress. People around her were staring. Did Brittany receive promotions despite having active complaints against her? Naomi continued. "Yes." "Did those complaints get dismissed without proper investigation?" "Yes." "Were all of these actions violations of company policy?" "Yes." She let that sink in. "I didn't make anyone violate ethics policies," Naomi said quietly. "I didn't force anyone to misuse their positions. I didn't create the conflicts of interest or the favoritism. All I did was bring those existing problems to light and address them according to standard corporate practices." "You destroyed my parents' careers," Derek shouted. "Your parents demoted themselves," Naomi corrected. "They were given a choice, accept a position without oversight responsibilities or face termination. They chose to stay with the company. That was their decision. Because of you. Because of their own actions," Naomi interrupted, her voice sharp now. Because they chose to prioritize helping you and your mistress over their professional ethics. Those were their choices, Derek. I didn't make those choices for them. The room was riveted. This was clearly more drama than anyone had expected from a corporate ownership meeting. Naomi took a breath, steadying herself. I want to be very clear about something. The ethics investigation was not about punishing specific people. It was about creating a healthy workplace where rules matter and everyone is treated fairly. She clicked to another slide. These are the employees who left Sterling Tech in the past 3 years. 37 people. When we interviewed them for our investigation, do you know what most of them said? They said they left because of the work environment. Because complaints weren't taken seriously. Because favoritism made it impossible to advance based on merit. Names and faces filled the screen. Real people who'd been driven out by the toxic culture. Those people matter, Naomi said. Their experiences matter. The fact that they felt they had to leave rather than be heard, that matters. This investigation wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure what happened to them doesn't happen to anyone else. She looked directly at Derek. You think this is personal? You're right that it affects you personally. But it's not about you. It's about building a company where people are valued for their work, not their connections. Where complaints are investigated, not dismissed. Where the rules apply to everyone equally. Patricia stood up, tears streaming down her face. Naomi, please. We're sorry. We made mistakes. But we've lost everything. Our reputations, our positions. You lost what you compromised, Naomi said not unkindly. Your reputations were built on 30 years of good work. Then you damaged those reputations by violating ethics policies. That's not my fault. I'm sorry you're hurting, but consequences are not the same as revenge. Robert pulled Patricia back down into her seat. Around them, other employees were whispering, some nodding in agreement with Naomi's words. I know some of you are scared right now, Naomi continued, addressing the whole room again. You're wondering if more people will be fired if your jobs are safe. Let me be clear. If you've been doing your job professionally and ethically, you have nothing to worry about. These changes are about eliminating toxic behavior, not punishing everyone. She clicked to a new slide showing company growth projections. Sterling Tech has enormous potential. That's why I invested in it. My goal is to build this company into something stronger and more successful. But we can't do that with a foundation of favoritism and ignored complaints. We needed to clean house first. What happens now? Someone called out from the audience. Now we move forward, Naomi said. The ethics policies are in place. The investigations are complete. We're implementing new training programs, new oversight structures, and new systems for reporting concerns. Anyone who continues to violate policies will face consequences. But for those of you who want to work hard and build your careers honestly, Sterling Tech will be a great place to work. She paused. I also want to announce that I'll be taking a more active role in company operations going forward. I'll be attending board meetings, reviewing departmental progress, and meeting with employees. This isn't just an investment for me. I'm committed to making Sterling Tech succeed. More murmurs, but these sounded less hostile. People were processing, adjusting to this new reality. Derek stood again. You're really going to do this? You're going to run the company where my parents work, knowing it will humiliate them every day. Your parents can choose to leave if they want, Naomi said calmly. Nobody is forcing them to stay. But if they do stay, they'll be treated exactly like every other employee, fairly, professionally, and according to the same rules that apply to everyone else. That's not humiliation. That's equality. This is insane, Derek muttered, but he sat back down. He'd realized finally that there was nothing he could do. No way to charm or manipulate his way out of this. His ex-wife owned the company. The wife he'd dismissed and underestimated was now his parents' boss. Naomi wrapped up the meeting with practical details. New management structure. Contact information for reporting concerns. Timeline for upcoming changes. As people filed out of the conference hall, Naomi saw the range of reactions. Some people looked relieved. These were probably the ones who'd been affected by the toxic culture and were glad to see it addressed. Some looked nervous. And some, like Derek and his parents, looked devastated. Trevor appeared at her side. That went well. Did it? You were clear, factual, and firm. You didn't make it personal even when Derek tried to. That was exactly the right approach. Naomi nodded, but she felt drained. Being in the same room with Derek, facing him, revealing the truth, it had taken everything she had. Ms. Williams? Someone approached hesitantly. A young woman from the accounting department. I just wanted to say, thank you. I filed one of those complaints about Brittany 2 years ago. Nothing happened and I almost quit. I'm glad someone finally took it seriously. Others came forward after that. Employees thanking her for the changes, for making them feel heard, for caring about ethics. Not everyone. Some people avoided her, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. But enough people expressed support that Naomi realized she'd done the right thing. This wasn't just about Derek. It was about all of these people trying to work in an environment that hadn't protected them. As the crowd thinned, Patricia approached. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past few weeks. "Naomi," she said quietly, "can we talk?" Naomi considered refusing. But she'd been honest in her speech. This wasn't about cruelty. It was about accountability. "You have 5 minutes," she said. Patricia glanced around, making sure Derek wasn't nearby. "What we did was wrong. I know that now. Derek was our son and we wanted to help him be happy. But we shouldn't have used our positions to help Brittany. We should have been honest about the conflict of interest." "Yes, you should have. I keep thinking about all the times we had dinner together. All the holidays. You were family and we betrayed you." "You did," Naomi agreed. There was no point in softening it. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Is there anything we can do? Any way to make this right?" "You can do your jobs professionally and ethically," Naomi said. "That's all I expect from any employee. I'm not going to fire you out of spite. But I'm also not going to give you special treatment. You're employees here, same as everyone else." "That's fair," Patricia whispered. "Is it?" Naomi tilted her head. "Because a few months ago, you thought it was fair to help your son's mistress get ahead while keeping his wife in the dark. Your sense of fairness seems to depend on who benefits." Patricia flinched. "You're right. I can't argue with that. I don't want you to argue. I want you to think about what you did and why it was wrong. And then I want you to move forward and be better." Patricia nodded and walked away, shoulders slumped. Derek was waiting by the exit. When Naomi approached, he stepped into her path. "You planned this whole thing," he said. "From the beginning. You knew you were rich and you hid it. You wanted to catch me." "I didn't want to catch you," Naomi replied tiredly. "I wanted to have a marriage. You're the one who chose to cheat. But you could have told me. About the money. Maybe if I'd known." "If you'd known what? You would have stayed with me for the money? That's supposed to be better?" Derek struggled for words. I don't understand how you could hide something that big." "The same way you hid a 2-year affair," Naomi said quietly. "We both kept secrets, Derek. The difference is, my secret was about protecting myself. Yours was about betraying me." She walked past him toward the exit, but he called after her. "Brittany left me. Did you know that?" Naomi stopped. "I heard. She said I ruined her life. That everything was perfect until my parents messed it up. She's gone, Naomi. My parents hate me. I don't have anything left." "That's not my problem," Naomi said without turning around. "How can you be so cold?" Now she did turn around. "Cold? Derek, you humiliated me in front of a room full of people. You divorced me thinking I had nothing. You never once considered how your actions affected me. Now you're facing consequences and suddenly I'm supposed to care? That's not cold. That's just done. I'm done caring about you." She left him standing there and walked out into the afternoon sunshine. Her driver was waiting. As the car pulled away from Sterling Tech, Naomi finally let herself feel it all. The exhaustion. The relief. The strange, bittersweet triumph. She'd done it. She'd faced them all and revealed the truth. Derek knew now. His parents knew. Everyone knew. And tomorrow she'd wake up and keep building her life. A life that had nothing to do with Derek Henderson or his family. A life that was completely, finally her own. The next 2 weeks were chaos at Sterling Tech, but Naomi wasn't there to see most of it. She delivered her message, made her position clear, and now she let her management team handle the day-to-day operations. But the reports came in daily and they were fascinating. Employee morale had actually improved. After the initial shock, people seemed relieved to know who was in charge and what the expectations were. The new ethics policies weren't just words on paper anymore. They were real, enforced, and everyone knew it. The 37 former employees who'd left Sterling Tech started receiving calls from HR. Naomi had instructed her team to reach out to each one personally, apologize for the environment that had driven them away, and offer them opportunities to return if they were interested. 7 of them came back. 20 others declined but expressed appreciation for the acknowledgement. The company's reputation in the industry got a boost. Word spread about the ethics overhaul, and Sterling Tech started attracting better talent. People wanted to work somewhere that took complaints seriously and treated employees fairly. But for Derek and his family, things got worse. Naomi heard about Derek's situation through various channels, not because she was seeking information, but because people who knew both of them felt compelled to tell her. Brittany hadn't just left Derek. She'd moved on spectacularly fast, apparently already dating someone new. Someone with money, according to the whispers. She'd posted photos on social media of luxury vacations and expensive restaurants, making it very clear she'd upgraded. Derek had tried to get her back at first, from what Naomi heard. There had been phone calls, texts, even showing up at her new apartment. But Brittany had been blunt. "You and your family cost me my career. Why would I stay with you?" She'd never loved him. She'd loved what she thought he could provide. A comfortable life, connections, security. The moment those things disappeared, so did she. Derek's relationship with his parents had deteriorated too. Patricia had apparently confronted him about the emails, about how he'd used their positions to help Brittany. "You made us complicit in your affair," she'd said, according to the family friend who reported it to Naomi. "We trusted you and you manipulated us." Robert wasn't speaking to Derek at all. His 30-year career had been reduced to a basic operations position with no authority. Every day at work was a reminder of what he'd lost, and he blamed his son for it. Derek had started drinking more. Missing work. His own job, at a different company thankfully for him, was suffering. Rumors suggested he might be fired for poor performance. Naomi tried to feel something about this. Satisfaction maybe, or vindication. But mostly she just felt tired of it all. Derek's life was falling apart, but not because she was actively destroying it. It was falling apart because the lies had caught up with him and the people he'd hurt were finally seeing him clearly. 3 weeks after the revelation, Naomi was in her penthouse when her assistant buzzed. "There's someone here to see you. Derek Henderson." Naomi's first instinct was to refuse. She had nothing to say to him. But curiosity won out. "Send him up." Derek looked terrible. His hair was uncombed, his clothes wrinkled. He had bags under his eyes and he'd clearly lost weight. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, standing awkwardly in her living room. His eyes took in the penthouse, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the expensive furniture, the artwork. This was the life she'd been living while married to him and he'd never known. "What do you want, Derek?" "I want to understand." He ran a hand through his hair. "All those years we were married, you were rich, billionaire rich, and you never said anything." "I had my reasons." "What reasons? Why would you hide that?" Naomi walked to the window looking out at the city. "Do you remember when we first got married? You made $50,000 a year and were so proud of it. Then you got promoted, started making more. You felt successful, confident. So when I started making money from my app, even small amounts, you got weird about it. Competitive. Like we were in some contest I didn't know about." "I never." "You did," Naomi interrupted. "You'd make jokes about my little hobby. You'd change the subject when I tried to talk about my work. And that was when I was making thousands, Derek. What do you think would have happened if I'd told you I sold my app for $800 million? Derek was silent. "You would have either resented me for out-earning you, or you would have become dependent on my money. Either way, it would have changed us. I wanted to believe we could have a marriage that wasn't about money. So you lied." "I kept a secret," Naomi corrected. "The same way you kept a secret about Brittany for 2 years. Except my secret was about protecting something I'd built. Yours was about destroying something we'd built together." Derek sank onto her couch without being invited. "Everything's gone. Brittany, my parents, my life. I don't even know who I am anymore. That's not my problem to solve." "I know." He looked up at her. "I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just trying to understand how we got here. We were happy once, weren't we?" "I thought we were," Naomi said honestly. "But I think you were happy with the idea of me. The quiet wife who didn't challenge you, who didn't threaten your ego, who stayed in the background of your life. You were never happy with the real me because you never bothered to know the real me. That's not fair. Isn't it? In 7 years of marriage, did you ever ask what I wanted? What my dreams were? What I was working toward?" Derek started to answer, then stopped. The truth was obvious in his silence. "You thought I was boring," Naomi continued. "You said it yourself at that party. But I wasn't boring. I was just quiet about the things that mattered most to me because I learned early in our marriage that you didn't really care. I cared about you. You cared about the version of me that was convenient. The one who didn't complicate your life or challenge your view of yourself." Naomi turned away from the window. That's why you were able to cheat for 2 years without even feeling that guilty. In your mind, you weren't betraying a real person. You were just moving on from a supporting character in your story. That's not true, Derek protested, but it sounded weak even to him. Then tell me one thing you learned about me in our last year of marriage. One dream I shared. One goal I was working toward. One thing that mattered to me. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Finally, I don't know. Exactly. They sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Derek said, "What about Sterling Tech? Are you going to keep running it? Or was this just about proving a point?" "I'm keeping it," Naomi said. "It's a good company with potential. I'm going to build it into something better. With my parents working there, they can choose to leave anytime they want. I'm not forcing them to stay. But you know they can't afford to quit. They're too close to retirement." "That's not my fault, Derek. They violated ethics policies at their workplace. They're facing the natural consequences of their actions. I'm not adding extra punishment, but I'm also not protecting them from the results of their choices." Derek stood up, pacing. "Do you know what it's like seeing them so defeated? My dad won't talk. My mom cries all the time. They're miserable. Do you know what it was like for me discovering my husband's affair at a company party in front of dozens of people?" Naomi countered. "While your parents sat there knowing the truth. While everyone looked at me with pity or amusement. I'm sorry about that. I really am. The way it happened was wrong." "The fact that it happened at all was wrong," Naomi said firmly. "Don't apologize for how I found out. Apologize for doing it in the first place. Apologize for 2 years of lies. Apologize for making me feel like I was crazy for not fitting into your real life, when the truth was you were deliberately keeping me out so you could have your affair." "I'm sorry," Derek said, and for the first time he sounded like he meant it. "I'm sorry for all of it. The affair, the lies, the things I said about you. You deserved better." Naomi felt something ease in her chest. Not forgiveness, she wasn't ready for that, might never be ready for it. But acknowledgement. Finally. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I needed to hear that. Does it change anything?" "No." Naomi's answer was immediate. "You hurt me, Derek. Deeply. And I've spent the last few months rebuilding myself, creating a life where I don't have to hide or feel small or worry about threatening someone's ego. I'm not going back to who I was." "I'm not asking you to take me back," Derek said quickly. "I know that's not possible. I miss you. Or I miss who we were. Or I miss believing I was a good person who had his life together." "You can still be that person," Naomi said. "But you have to face what you did wrong, learn from it, and actually change. You can't just feel sorry for yourself and expect that to be enough." Derek nodded slowly. "What about my parents? Is there anything?" "No," Naomi interrupted. "I'm not discussing your parents with you. My relationship with them as their employer is separate from my relationship with you as my ex-husband. Don't try to use me to help them, and don't use them to try to manipulate me. Those days are over." Derek looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Naomi's expression stopped him. He finally nodded and walked to the door. "Naomi," he said, pausing. "For what it's worth, I see you now. Who you really are. And you're right, you're not boring. You're extraordinary. I was too stupid to realize it." "Yes, you were," Naomi agreed. "But I'm not extraordinary because I'm rich, Derek. I was always this person. I built my app, sold it, invested wisely. I did all of that while we were married, while you thought I was just nothing special. The money didn't make me extraordinary. It was always there. You just never looked." She didn't wait for his response. She closed the door between them and walked back to her windows, overlooking the city. Her phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. "Board meeting tomorrow to discuss expansion plans. Your presence requested." Naomi smiled. Her presence requested. Not tolerated or accommodated. Requested. She was building something real now. A business empire. A reputation. A life where she didn't have to hide or minimize herself to make others comfortable. Derek's visit had given her something she'd needed. His acknowledgement that he'd been wrong. But it had also confirmed what she'd already known. She didn't need his approval or understanding or regret to move forward. She'd already moved forward without him. And she was doing just fine. 6 months after the Sterling Tech revelation, Naomi's life had transformed in ways she'd never imagined. The penthouse apartment had become her sanctuary. Every morning, she woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, coffee already brewing in the kitchen thanks to her assistant's careful scheduling. She'd sit at her dining table, which doubled as her workspace when she wasn't in the office, and review reports from her various businesses. Sterling Tech was thriving. Employee satisfaction scores had jumped 30%. Client retention was up. 3 major contracts had been signed, bringing in revenue that exceeded projections. The company that had once tolerated unethical behavior was now being featured in business magazines as an example of positive corporate culture change. Patricia and Robert still worked there. They kept their heads down, did their jobs competently, and avoided Naomi whenever possible. She'd heard through HR that they were planning to retire early in about 2 years. That was fine with her. They weren't causing problems and she wasn't going to push them out before they were ready to go. Derek had been fired from his job 3 months ago for poor performance and excessive absences. The last Naomi heard, he was working as a contractor, making decent money but nowhere near what he'd made before. He'd stopped drinking, supposedly, and was going to therapy. She'd gotten this information from Justin, who still occasionally texted her to check in. Brittany had moved to another state with her new boyfriend. Naomi had seen one social media post. Someone had shown it to her, where Brittany was at a beach resort, caption reading, "Living my best life." Naomi had felt nothing looking at it. Not anger, not satisfaction. Nothing. Brittany was irrelevant now. The revenge, if it could be called that, was complete. Everyone who'd hurt Naomi had faced consequences for their actions. Not because she destroyed them, but because the truth had come to light and natural consequences had followed. And now Naomi was ready for the next chapter. She was in her office at Sterling Tech, reviewing expansion proposals when her assistant knocked. "There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says he's been waiting to meet you for weeks." Naomi frowned. "Who is it?" "Anthony Ross. He owns Ross Industries. They're a manufacturing company we've been contracting with." Naomi remembered the name. Ross Industries provided components for Sterling Tech's products. Good quality, reliable delivery, fair prices. She'd approved several contracts with them. "Send him in." The man who walked in was tall, probably in his early 40s, with dark brown skin and an easy smile. He wore a well-tailored suit but somehow made it look casual. "Ms. Williams," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Anthony Ross. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment." "Mr. Ross." Naomi shook his hand. "What can I do for you?" "Actually, I came to thank you." He sat down when she gestured to a chair. "My company has been working with Sterling Tech for 5 years, but it's only in the last 6 months that communication has been clear and contracts have been fair. I wanted to meet the person responsible for that change." Naomi felt herself relax slightly. Not a problem then. Just appreciation. "I inherited Sterling Tech with some issues," she said diplomatically. "We've been working to fix them." "You've done more than fix them. You've transformed the whole culture." Anthony leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I'm a small business owner. I know what it's like to deal with companies that think they can push you around because they're bigger. Sterling Tech used to be like that. Now, it's one of my favorite clients." They talked for 20 minutes about business, about the challenges of running companies, about the manufacturing industry and tech sector. Anthony was smart, funny, and genuinely interested in her thoughts on various topics. As he stood to leave, he hesitated. "This is probably inappropriate since we have a business relationship, but would you be interested in having dinner sometime? Not to discuss contracts or business. Just dinner." Naomi was surprised by how much she wanted to say yes. She'd been so focused on work, on rebuilding her life, that she hadn't thought about dating at all. "I'd like that," she said. Anthony's smile was bright. "Really? Great. I'll have my assistant call your assistant and we'll set something up. Somewhere that's not about business at all." After he left, Naomi sat at her desk, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time, excited about the future. Not about revenge or justice or proving anyone wrong. Just excited about possibility. Dinner with Anthony happened the following week at a small restaurant that was definitely not about business. They talked for 3 hours, about their families, their interests, their lives before business success. Anthony had been married once, divorced 5 years ago, no kids. He loved jazz music and terrible action movies. He'd built his company from nothing, just like Naomi had built hers. "What made you hide your success from your ex-husband?" Anthony asked over dessert. Naomi had wondered if he'd heard the stories. Everyone in their business circles had. "Fear mostly," she said honestly. "I was afraid of how money would change things between us. Turns out, I should have been afraid of who he was all along." "Do you regret hiding it?" "No," Naomi said after thinking about it. "If I told Derek about the money, he might have stayed with me for the wrong reasons. This way I found out who he really was. It hurt, but at least it was honest. Painful honesty is better than comfortable lies, Anthony said thoughtfully. That's exactly it. They saw each other regularly after that. Anthony never asked about her net worth or her businesses beyond general conversation. He paid for dinners without making it a statement, but he also let her pay without getting weird about it. He treated her like an equal, someone interesting for who she was rather than what she had. It was refreshing. 3 months into dating Anthony, Naomi ran into Derek at a business conference. She almost didn't recognize him. He looked healthier, more put together than the last time she'd seen him. "Naomi," he said, surprised. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I'm keynoting tomorrow," she said, "speaking about corporate ethics and culture change." Derek nodded slowly. "I heard Sterling Tech is doing really well." "It is." An awkward pause. Then Derek said, "I'm glad. I mean it. You deserve good things." "Thank you." "I'm doing better too," Derek offered. "Got a new job, better company. I'm in therapy working on a lot of things. Turns out I had some issues around money and success that I never dealt with." "I'm glad you're getting help," Naomi said, and meant it. She didn't want Derek's life to be destroyed forever. She just wanted him to understand what he'd done and grow from it. "My parents are retiring next year," Derek continued. "Mom mentioned that Sterling Tech is giving them a full retirement package even though they were demoted. She wanted me to thank you, but she's too proud to do it herself." "They earned that retirement with 30 years of work," Naomi said. "The fact that they made mistakes at the end doesn't erase all the good years." Derek looked like he might cry. "That's generous of you." "It's not generous. It's fair." Naomi checked her watch. "I need to go. I have a dinner meeting." She started to walk away, then turned back. "Derek, I hope you figure things out. I really do. Not for my sake, but for yours." "I'm trying," he said quietly. "I'm really trying." Naomi believed him. And that was enough. Her keynote speech the next day was titled, "When Truth Becomes Power, Building Ethical Companies in a Results-Driven World." She talked about Sterling Tech's transformation without mentioning Derek or his family specifically. She focused on systems, accountability, and the business case for ethical behavior. The speech was well received. Afterward, multiple CEOs approached her for consulting advice. Naomi took their cards, already thinking about how this could become another business venture. She was expanding, growing, building something that went beyond one company or one story of revenge. A year after the Sterling Tech revelation, Naomi stood at the window of her penthouse, glass of wine in hand, looking out at the city lights. Anthony came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. They'd been dating for 9 months now, and it was easy in a way her marriage to Derek had never been. Anthony saw her, really saw her, and appreciated who she was. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different my life is now," Naomi said. "A year ago I was standing in a conference room at Sterling Tech, being humiliated by my husband. Now I own that company. I'm keynoting conferences. I'm dating someone who actually knows who I am. It's been quite a year. Do you think I was wrong?" Naomi asked suddenly. "Buying Sterling Tech, doing the investigation, revealing everything?" Anthony was quiet for a moment. "I think you held people accountable for their actions. That's not wrong. It's rare, maybe, and uncomfortable for people who are used to avoiding consequences. But not wrong. Sometimes I worry I was too harsh. Did you do anything illegal? Anything unethical?" "No." "Did you target people who hadn't actually violated policies?" "No." "Then you weren't too harsh. You were just uncomfortable for people to deal with, because you refused to let bad behavior slide." Anthony kissed the top of her head. "The world needs more people like you, Naomi. People who draw lines and enforce them." Naomi leaned back against him, feeling settled in a way she'd never felt with Derek. This relationship was built on honesty from the start. Anthony knew her net worth, her businesses, her ambitions. He wasn't threatened by any of it. He celebrated it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. "Sterling Tech just got nominated for Best Workplace Culture by the Business Excellence Association. First nomination in company history." Naomi smiled. A year ago, Sterling Tech had been featured in investigation reports for ethics violations. Now it was being nominated for awards. That was transformation. That was justice. That was what happened when truth mattered more than comfort. She thought about Derek occasionally, wondered if he ever looked at Sterling Tech's success and realized what he'd thrown away. Not the money, though that too, but the person. The woman who'd built something from nothing, who'd been strong enough to keep secrets and smart enough to use them wisely. But it didn't matter what Derek thought anymore. His opinion had no weight in her life. Naomi had spent 7 years being underestimated, being dismissed, being treated like a supporting character in someone else's story. Those 7 years had taught her something important. The world would underestimate her only as long as she let it. The moment she stepped into her power, owned her success, demanded to be seen, everything changed. She was the main character of her own story now. The protagonist. The hero. The one who won. Not through violence or cruelty, but through truth, accountability, and refusing to be invisible. Derek had divorced the woman he thought was nothing. He'd lost the woman who was everything. And Naomi? Naomi had found herself. And that was the best revenge of all. 2 years after the revelation, Sterling Tech was sold to a Fortune 500 company for 3 times what Naomi had paid for it. She walked away with a substantial profit and a reputation as someone who could transform struggling companies. She'd started a consulting firm specializing in corporate culture transformation. Companies with ethics problems called her. She went in, did the investigation, implemented the changes, and left them better than she'd found them. Anthony proposed on a beach in Bali. Naomi said yes without hesitation. They married in a small ceremony with friends and chosen family, people who'd supported her journey, who saw her for who she really was. Derek sent a card. Just a simple congratulations, no long message. Naomi appreciated the restraint. They weren't friends and never would be, but they'd reached a place of peaceful distance. Patricia and Robert retired as planned. They sent Naomi a formal thank you letter for the retirement package. She never responded, but she was glad they'd acknowledged it. Brittany remained irrelevant. Naomi heard once that she'd married her wealthy boyfriend, then divorced him a year later. She didn't follow up to learn more. Some stories didn't need endings. Naomi's life was full now, full of work she loved, relationships that nourished her, and a sense of self she'd never had during her marriage to Derek. Sometimes, late at night, she thought about that woman who'd walked into the Sterling Tech party and discovered her husband's affair. That woman who'd signed divorce papers without fighting, who'd let everyone think she had nothing. That woman had been playing the long game. And she'd won. Not because she'd destroyed Derek, though his life had certainly changed, but because she'd built something better. Something real. Something honest. She turned betrayal into business success. Humiliation into empowerment. Loss into opportunity. And she'd done it without compromising her ethics, without becoming cruel, without letting anger turn her into someone she didn't recognize. That was the real victory. Not revenge, transformation. And Naomi Williams, billionaire businesswoman, former quiet wife, current force to be reckoned with, had transformed completely. She'd become exactly who she was meant to be.